This is you proving that you can plot, that you can create character arcs, and that you can tell a novel-length story without actually writing the story. Hey guys, I'm Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. If writing workshops and traditional publishing talk are your thing, please consider subscribing. So in my vlog last Friday, I mentioned that I'm currently working on the draft of a book that I actually sold on proposal. And I thought that might make a great topic for a video, not just how to put one together, but also how to know when it's a good idea to even try to sell a novel on proposal. Before we get into this, I want to clarify that I am talking about novels, as in fiction books, not nonfiction. It's extremely common for nonfiction books to be sold on proposal, and what a nonfiction book proposal looks like is very, very different from what a fiction book proposal looks like. In broad terms, the proposal for a novel is going to be a synopsis or outline plus sample chapters. How detailed the outline is and how many chapters or pages you include is up to you, and your publisher or editor might have specific requirements. The first book I ever sold on proposal was my second series, The Kat Sinclair Files. I was finishing up my first series and I wanted to continue working with that editor. So I put together a proposal for a new project and I sent it to my agent to get her thoughts. And here's what I ended up with. The first part of my proposal was a short one-sentence pitch. When Kat Lasky starts blogging a behind-the-scenes look at her father's ghost hunting series, she discovers the show and her dad might be cursed. This pitch isn't quite accurate anymore. I mean, you can see that the titles changed and even the character's last name changed. And a lot of the elements of the story have changed too. But at the time that I wrote this, and at this stage of development, this was the best pitch for the series that I could come up with. If you have any comp titles to popular books, shows, movies that you can compare your book to, this one-sentence pitch is the place to work that in. For example, I put this proposal together a few years before the Ghostbusters reboot. Once that movie came out and books in this series were still coming out, Penguin started pitching my book as great for tweens who love Ghostbusters. And that's definitely something I would have worked into the original pitch had the movie been out when I was working on this proposal. Next up was my blurb. Looking at this now, I would say this is actually a bit long. I would recommend that you stick to like 1 or 2 paragraphs if you can. This is the longer pitch that you would use for your query letter or what you envision would be on the jacket flap copy of your novel. It should be voicey, it needs to include a hook, and it should give the reader a solid sense of what the main conflict of the book is without giving too much away. In this blurb, we have the premise of a girl traveling the world with her recently divorced dad, the new host of a Ghost Hunters TV show, there's a curse that's resulted in the previous 3 hosts mysteriously vanishing, and the implication that her dad is next, and this last line, saving her dad and the show means facing the skeletons in all of their closets, hinting at the way her internal conflict, her parents' divorce and her issues with her mother, is going to collide with her external conflict, saving her dad and the show. After that, I wrote a chapter-by-chapter outline. The Kat Sinclair books are between 40,000 and 50,000 words each, and this outline is 8,500 words. It's pretty detailed. This type of outline or synopsis doesn't need to be super voicey like your blurb. This is more you telling the editor the story. This is you proving that you can plot, that you can create character arcs, and that you can tell a novel-length story without actually writing the story. But here's the thing, and if you're a pantser who's cringing at this, listen up. This outline is not what your book has to be. It's what your book could be. My editor acquired this book based on this proposal, and she gave me tons of notes on the outline. And then once I had written the first draft, she gave me tons of notes on that. The final version, the published novel, is actually really different from what I originally pitched in this proposal. So don't stress out because you think you're locking yourself into telling this story this exact way. Look at it this way, if you write a full manuscript and you go out on sub and it sells, your editor is going to give you notes, probably more than 1 round. Your book is going to change for the better. It's the exact same thing when you sell on proposal, only the notes are going to start at the outlining phase. I also want to add that it's not always necessary to write such a detailed chapter-by-chapter outline. Once you've established a relationship with an editor and a house, and they've worked with you and they know that you can finish a novel, your proposal might be more like a 3 to 5 page synopsis. The next piece of my proposal was the sample chapters. I wrote 3 sample chapters totaling about 7,500 words. I would suggest that if you're writing a multi-POV book, you include a chapter from all or at least 3 of your main characters' points of view so that your editor can see you have a distinct voice for each of them. Now, when I sent this proposal off to my agent, she came back and asked if I could write up a couple of blurbs for potential sequels. So the final proposal that we submitted included blurbs for a potential book 2 and book 3 to make this a trilogy. These blurbs are not at all accurate anymore. This is not the plot of book 2 or book 3. But again, you're just showing proof that you have more stories to tell in this world with these characters. Now, if you're writing a dynamic series, meaning a duology, a trilogy, any series where there is a set number of books and there's a series arc and it's all building towards one final climax or confrontation in the last book, then you want to do your best to show that arc in these blurbs. If you're writing a static series, meaning a series with no set number of books that feature the same cast of characters and the same premise, but each one is a new adventure, such as cozy mystery series or serials, then what you want these blurbs to do is to show that this series has legs. Think of it like a television series. A great pilot episode isn't enough. What other shenanigans can these characters get into? What's going to compel readers to tune in every week to see what they're getting up to now? Now that you've got all the components for a great fiction book proposal, let's talk about whether or not you actually want to try selling on sub. The first thing I'll say, and I don't think this is going to come as a surprise, is that if you are a debut author, it's probably best that you write the full manuscript. Because, as I'm sure you know, writing an entire novel, actually finishing it, is something that a lot of people set out to do, but very, very few people actually accomplish it. Editors are going to want to know that you don't just want to write a book, you can write a book. That said, it is not unheard of for debuts to sell on proposal. My debut, I Heart Band, was technically sold on proposal, although this was an IP project, meaning it was an idea that was developed in-house and then I was hired to write it. So that's a slightly different case. However, I have heard of other examples. I know an author who went to acquisitions with a completed manuscript and the publisher passed only because her book was too similar to another title that they already had on their list for the next season. But they really loved her writing and they encouraged her to send them the next thing that she wrote. Her agent, who is also my agent, which is how I know this story, helped her put together 2 proposals for 2 brand new books in the same genre. The house bought both. That author sold not just 1, but 2 debuts on proposal. So it's not impossible. In her case, they'd read a full manuscript that she'd written, so they knew she had the ability to write a complete novel and they fell in love with her writing. In her case, knowing how to whip up a proposal really came in handy. Okay, so let's say you have a book deal already, or maybe even you have a few published novels under your belt. All of your future books can be sold on proposal, right? Not exactly. The best piece of advice I can give you is to talk to your agent, because your agent is going to have their finger on the pulse of publishing and they'll be able to give you much more informed and specific advice than I could ever give you in this video. Whether or not you're going to have success selling on proposal depends on so many things other than whether or not you've been published before. I sold Olive and the Backstage Ghost on proposal because I had worked with that editor on previous projects. But for my co-authored series Secrets of Topsy and for my co-authored standalone novel The Pros of Cons, my agent and my co-author's agents recommended that we write the full manuscripts before going on sub. Why? For Secrets of Topsy, it's because those books have a unique format that's somewhere between a novel and a short story collection. There's an arc, but each chapter is its own episode and there are lots of little vignettes tying everything together. It actually would have been a lot harder to explain what we were trying to do in a proposal and much easier just to write the draft so that the editor could fully understand our vision. As for The Pros of Cons, which is a standalone YA contemporary novel, we did send a proposal to our agents. They loved it, but they advised us to write the full manuscript. They explained that, first of all 3 of them at the time were having a more difficult time than usual selling partials to publishers. So even though all three of us had multiple books published already, our agents felt they'd have a better chance at selling the book if it was completed, and they also felt they'd have a better chance at getting us a bigger advance. And that's definitely something you want. Also, timing played a huge role. We sent that proposal to our agents mid-November, and it's kind of notoriously a bad idea to go on sub right before the holidays. So they encouraged us to work on finishing the manuscript over the next 2 months so that we had something brand new and exciting to go on submission with in the new year. It was all great advice, and obviously we were on board. So again, it's not just about experience level, it's about the editor, it's about the publishing house, it's about your concept, it's about the market and the current state of things. There's so much to consider when you're trying to decide whether or not to sell on proposal. But I am willing to bet that at some point in your career, whether a publisher passes on your full manuscript but is so in love with your writing that they ask you to send another idea over stat, or if an opportunity comes along for you to audition for an IP project, you're going to be glad you know how to put together a great fiction book proposal. That's it for this video. If you guys found it helpful, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button. I'll see you Friday with another vlog, and have a great week. Bye.